So I know most of you here. For those of you that I'm meeting for the first time, I'm Robert Bean. I've been an exhibiting artist for about 30 years, I think at this point, pretty close. I taught at UA Little Rock for a little while. I taught their professional practices class, kind of the business of art class to students there. I ran the 2D departments at the school at the, I love to say the really long version, the Wingate Art School of the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. One of the longest titles ever, right? So, but I recently stepped back from both of those roles, and I am now teaching high school, which is a very, very different kind of vibe. But it's, no matter where I'm teaching or whatever, I'm still, I'm teaching art skills, business skills, all those kinds of things. And I have exhibited in a lot of different types of galleries over the years. So when Scarlett asked me to lead this workshop, I was happy to come in and share what I know about doing that. So some of you in here, I also know, have quite a bit of experience. If I don't know you, I don't know how much experience you have, but I'm hoping that what we go over tonight will at least maybe change how you see galleries a little bit and change how you approach them. A lot of times, artists kind of come into talking about how to exhibit their work with a very set picture of what galleries are. That's been my experience anyway, working with students. They have a certain idea of what a gallery is, what it's like, and then the reality is often very much different from that. So even if you've had a lot of experience with galleries, maybe some of the stuff I talk about tonight will change maybe how you look at something, or maybe you go, oh, that's why that didn't work for me, or so-and-so, that sort of thing. So if you have questions, feel free to interrupt and say, hey, but what about this? Or tell me if you think I'm wrong or whatever else, that's okay. But we're gonna start actually by having you guys do a short little 3-question answer thing. So Scarlett, if you will go to the next slide. Can everyone read this? I can kind of read them out if I need to. But I want you to just write down some thoughts. Take about 5 minutes and write down your thoughts to answer, why do you want to work with a gallery? What do you think working with a gallery will get you? And how have you approached galleries so far, if you've done so? Do you think I actually had you try to answer these questions?
To know stuff.
To know stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because maybe we don't know why we want a gallery, just want to do it because everybody says gallery.
Yeah. And that's usually kind of the thing, right? Is especially if you have art students, and they're going through art school and they're doing all the art things, and it was like, we got to get in a gallery. And 40 years ago, yeah, but today, no. And that's why I wanted you guys to start thinking through that. There are a lot of artists now that make a great living, make good money, and they never show in a gallery. Never have to. One of the big changes that's happened in the past few decades is, while there are still, when you get to like that museum level and you get to that really upper echelon of like fine art, you have the gatekeepers and you have the curators and you have the galleries. Everything else is opened up. There are artists that are doing their own galleries online and selling straight out of that. There are artists making pop-ups. There's artists doing all kinds of things and being very inventive in how they're approaching it, and they're doing just fine without. So if we're going to talk about how you get into galleries, the first thing I want you thinking about is, why do you even want to work with one? So someone give me an answer. Why do you want to work with one?
I think it's a great way to expand social network and interactions with other people in the community.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
Have your work seen by prospective collectors.
Okay. Yeah.
Wider audience.
A wider audience?
Well, some gallery owners have like a network of people looking for a certain kind of art that you can then connect them with. Does that make sense? Like
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's also correct, right? And so the idea of working with a gallery isn't so much anymore that this is how you have to do it, as much as I need something specific out of the transaction, right? And that is actually very empowering to the individual artist too, right? And that's something we'll talk a little bit about later, is kind of that idea of how it's empowering going into talks with the gallery, knowing you don't have to have them. right? Where before you did, so you kind of had to do what the gallery said. Now you're like, okay, well, if you don't want to show my work, then I'm going to go do this thing over here, and I'll build my own following, right? So just understanding kind of where you're at with galleries in terms of a potential relationship is a big part of this whole problem. So if you'll go to the next slide. Okay, so what most artists do is that they're going to approach gaining representation with a gallery or getting exhibition opportunities, and they're going to do it in the same way no matter the venue. This is also a major mistake that you make, right? You think I put a portfolio together, I have an artist statement, I have an artist bio, I package it up and I ship it off. That's not the way it works anymore. Galleries are so different because they're having to become really engaging and vibrant in order to survive now. This is one of those things that the internet did, right? I think in the last 20, 30 years, I think the number is that we lost 2/3 of the commercial galleries in the United States. They closed. They couldn't survive. And a lot of that is because you have online galleries like Saatchi that have popped up where it's easy to buy art that way. Individual artists are making their own things online as a way to sell. So galleries have had to get really inventive, and they've had to change a lot of how they do things. Or they have other revenue streams that help keep them afloat, right? So if you think you can send the same portfolio to 10 different galleries, you're wrong. You've got to do your due diligence. You've got to research the galleries to understand who you're sending it to. So understanding the galleries, and this is why I put this at the bottom, understanding the gallery itself, the venue, is key to being able to work with them. Now I look at galleries in 3 different types. So if you'll switch to the next slide. Commercial galleries, $signs, right? Educational galleries, and alternative galleries or spaces. And there are galleries that kind of cross over between these. Like a museum might be considered educational and alternative at the same time, depending on the kind of museum. But there are certain things about each of these categories that you want to keep in mind. The portfolio that I send to, say, a nonprofit that has an exhibition space might be wildly different compared to the portfolio I send to a commercial gallery in like New Orleans, right? So what the commercial gallery needs is very different from what an alternative space might need. And that's why you have to really understand these things in order to best approach how to work with them. So commercial galleries are, the thing to remember is they're there to make money. That's the whole point of them. They're there to sell. They are a business. Educational galleries are there for education, right? Sometimes educational galleries might also allow more experimental work. They might allow things that are a little bit different, or they'll do things out of someone's private collection or things like that. But their whole purpose is to educate the people coming to the gallery, right? How many of you have ever shown in like a university gallery? And a bunch of people have shown in galleries, right? So, did the university gallery process sales for you? One did?
Very seldom.
It's rare, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, they just say, we will put you in touch, we'll put the buyer in touch with you. And then you handle the sale and move on from that point, right? So if you think, well, I need to get gallery shows so that I can make money, and then you start submitting to universities, well, good luck. You know, it may or may not work, but it's going to be on you to have to drive that. And then alternative galleries can be anything from showing in like a coffee house to like maybe like a gallery run by a church to a nonprofit to like and I think I'll visit an example later, the one time a year pop-up gallery at a Renaissance fair, right? So any of those weird alternative kind of spaces might have really individualized ways that you have to approach them to be able to exhibit and sell with them. And they may or may not, in the same way educational galleries are, they may or may not handle sales. It may be up to you. So let's talk about commercial galleries first. And I think this probably won't be much of a surprise to you guys, but I know it's a lot of text. So I'm just going to kind of go over each point a little bit. So primary goal, like I said, of commercial galleries is money, sales, income. That's what drives them. They are there to be in business. Now, some commercial galleries will have alternative revenue streams on top of art sales. They might do framing, or they'll have some other thing they do to help, keep the lights on and the doors open. But when they are reviewing art, 95% of the time, the commercial gallery is looking for art that is going to please their clients, right? And that's why you can approach a commercial gallery with amazing work and they'll go, no, right? You may be better than every other artist in the gallery, but if their clients don't fit your kind of work, you don't fit their clients, and there's no reason for them to have you, right? Now, really high-end galleries sometimes will still take on an artist who might not fit just right if they see a lot of potential. But what that gallery is doing is probably signing that artist to an exclusive contract and a long-term contract in order to develop that artist's career. And that's at the very, very high levels where that happens. Most galleries do not do that anymore. Most galleries just take on artists and who they think they can sell, and they might find ways to get their artists into like a museum show or make network connections for them. But most of the time, they're just putting stuff on the walls because they think it'll move. So you just want to keep that in mind. Commercial galleries will also present a brand or a look, and they'll look for artists that fit that brand. That's kind of the same thing, right? So if you have like a Southwest art gallery, what kind of art do they sell? Southwest art, right? So like if I was, to send a portfolio to a gallery that has nothing but paintings of, cowboys, and they're like looking at my weird sci-fi illustration stuff, they're like, why'd you even send this here, right? It doesn't fit, it doesn't match. And sometimes galleries will, now that branding is such a big deal and online presence is such a big deal, sometimes galleries will also work with artists just because that artist fits what they're trying to put out there in terms of publicity, right? Well, we've got this new artist that also does these things that are street oriented or something. And so they might take an artist on for that reason. Kind of mentioned this earlier, but there's a definite hierarchy of commercial galleries, with some galleries showing only like local or regional artists, and then some that are showing like international level. Years ago, I took a trip to San Francisco, and I wanted to see the galleries that were out there. I made the mistake through the first 4 galleries of mentioning that I was an artist, and they shut down. They stopped talking to me, they wouldn't communicate with me, they wanted nothing to do with me. When I got to the 5th gallery and told them I was an art educator and that I taught at a university, they opened up, they took me in the back room, they were showing me works with all their artists because they were trying to get someone who would be teaching everybody about their artists so they might sell them more, right? But I was an artist, they didn't want to have anything to do with me at all. My parents several years ago took a trip to the East Coast and went into a gallery and found a painting that they were ready to drop $3,000 on. And I told them before they took the trip, because they told me they were going to art galleries, I said, do not mention that your son is an artist. My dad mentioned, our son is an artist. The dealer shut down on him. He missed out on a $3,000 sale, but didn't want to talk to my parents because my parents were associated with an artist. And the reason is a lot of artists just walking off the street and bug galleries all the time. Hey, will you look at my portfolio? Hey, will you do this, right? So commercial galleries shut down at that. They don't want to deal with that most of the time. Now, some galleries will, but most of them, they're like, you need to make an appointment or that sort of thing. I've been yelled at and told to get out of the gallery. In New Orleans, I went in and said, hey, like they were hanging a new show, but their door was open. So I walked in and said, hey, where are the other galleries in here? I'm an artist and I want to, they were like, get out, yelled at me. So commercial galleries are very odd sometimes, especially when you get into like the bigger markets, right? But you also have some galleries that like specialize in, we only show artists from like Central Arkansas, or we show only Arkansas-based artists, or the Mid-South. They'll have like a region they focus on. And it might not be a style, but it might be a region. In that case, you might have a better chance of like getting into that kind of gallery, right? So, but knowing that means you have to do your research. You got to look up and see what they do. Who do they show? That sort of thing. Some commercial galleries will participate in things like Art Expo Chicago or Art Expo New York. They participate in those big fairs. Other galleries don't. But there's also no guarantee that if you're working with that gallery that they're going to take your work to that show, right? They're going to take what they think is going to actually sell. And I know some of those galleries that go to those bigger fairs like that, they make their year at the fair. So they have to take the stuff they know that they're going to be able to move.
How does the gallery know what they can move? Like, how do they know what's gonna sell?
They know their clients. So they know, like, they'll have collectors that buy, like, only portraits of women or something. So that, like, and they know that those collectors are coming to the fair. So they'll try to stack it and stuff like that.
You said you need to have research to know. What about relationships with galleries? I mean, is that part of the research?
Yeah, I'll talk about that,
Okay.
how you build a relationship with a gallery, because that does matter a lot. Yeah.
So if you know your style, do you Google what galleries sell this particular kind of work? Or
You can. If you have a very identifiable like genre or style to what you do, you can like Google that or do internet searches for galleries that do that. There's a problem with that though. If they already have 3 artists that do that kind of style, they've already got what they need.
Mind changes or not?
Well, that also makes it harder, right? But it's one of those things where you know, you might approach a gallery where you've been looking at it and you know some of the artists in it and your work fits within kind of the style the gallery represents, but then they go, I've already got 5 artists that do that kind of work. We don't need another one, right? So you can run into that problem too with commercial galleries. Like I said earlier, some commercial galleries will seek out exhibition opportunities for their artists outside of the gallery, like art fairs or museum shows, that sort of thing. However, that tends to only be the artists in their stable of artists that are showing a real strong like upward trajectory with their work, where they think, like, why is it important that an artist has a museum show from a commercial gallery standpoint?
On your resume.
Prestige, purchase power, right? If they can tell their client, well, this artist was just in a show at this museum, all of a sudden it's one of those things that justifies why their artist has the prices they have, right? So a lot of times when you're looking at those other things that artists do, the commercial gallery is looking at how does that justify the price tag? How does that justify me being able to push the sale? So you have to kind of think through that when you're thinking about commercial galleries. Commercial galleries are going to respond best to what is selling right now. They're in business, right? So if they know that there's a trend right now with this kind of work, they're going to jump on it. So what does that mean for you, the artist? It's harder when you're trying to get into a market that you don't live in, because either you're having to take a lot of frequent trips to see what's happening, or you got to know someone that can tell you. It's hard to kind of keep up with that, right? In Little Rock, I can take 2 weeks and go to all the galleries and see what's on the walls and see what's selling, what's not, go to openings. I can keep up with it, right? But is like, if I'm trying to get into Chicago, I got to know somebody there, or I got to make frequent trips up there. I've got to build those relationships and go up and do that. So let's say that a commercial gallery has a stable of 40 artists. Unless you are a salon-style gallery like Gallery 26 is, does everyone understand the difference, salon versus, I don't remember what we call the other one at this point. White wall? White cube, thank you. White cube gallery. A white cube gallery is one that just has plain white walls and everything hangs at the 58 inches from the floor kind of height. You know, it's all at the same height. It was the white cube galleries that threw me out in San Francisco. The salon style is like Gallery 26, where it's floor to ceiling with a bunch of different art on it, right? So if you go to a gallery like Gallery 26, the salon style, they're going to probably put your work on the wall. They're going to find a spot, they're going to get it up, right? You go to like a white cube gallery and you get representation by them, you go into the back room. Your work doesn't come out unless they think there's a specific client that they can show it to and sell it to, right? So you may end up consigning, 10 paintings to this gallery, and they sit there for a year and they never come out and get on the wall. A lot of times those white cube galleries will have, they might have like a juried show, or they might have like some kind of like invitational, And what they're doing is they're test marketing certain artists. They're bringing them in, putting 2 or 3 pieces on the wall to see how they do. And if they do well, they try to bring them into the stage. Yeah.
Do we have White Cube galleries in Little Rock?
I can't.
Well, Graham, right? Regional Art Museum, maybe?
And Fort Smith,
Arkansas.
Boswell Moreau's
That's
closed.
what I was
Boswell's
thinking.
one. Yeah. And Greg Thompson, yeah.
Justice.
Justice, yes. That's another one. So there are a few, not as many. Most of them are more like the salon style, or there are some kind of hybrid alternative space. Yeah.
Actually, Boswell might be, is that a cube or is that a, no, that's,
They operate more like a white cube.
yeah.
Yeah. And he'll have artists in the back room that
Yeah.
he so some you also have with commercial galleries, are they a brick and mortar walk-in or are they someone who's acting more like a dealer, right? Do you have someone in the gallery that's actively going out and like, you know, trying to like pull a hospital as a client and put 40 pieces in the hospital? You know, that's more of a dealer that also has a gallery space. And then you have galleries that are destination spaces that are walk-ins. They're brick and mortar walk-in spaces. That's more like what Gallery 26 is, right? You come into that space and see what's there at the time and you buy something. So it just kind of depends. Now I know Renee will also find opportunities for her artists when she can, but that's not her main focus, right? There are artists that, or galleries that actually will be trying to place their artists in collections or place their artists in things. So just, again, you have to kind of figure out what the galleries do. But this is that last part down at the bottom. If you can't read it, a commercial gallery is a business. Remember this at all times. I've seen more artists get screwed up by this than anything else because they're in love with the idea of art and making art and cool ideas and everything else, and it's like they're a business. You can't get experimental with them. You can't do all this other stuff, right? Because you have to make stuff that's gonna get a red dot. That's the whole point.
Not approach a commercial gallery, but know what's gonna happen, may happen if you walk in.
Right. If you
Just be savvy about it.
it's a business. They're there to make money. They're there to, you know, keep going. So, and they don't have an alternative funding source like a grant or something that's allowing them to take risks in the same way that like a nonprofit space might. So for that reason, you are going in to partner with a business. Yeah.
Does that hold back the innovation of arts in our, even in Arkansas? Like,
No.
no?
I don't think so. It's artists will sometimes, like if you're working with a gallery and you know it's a commercial gallery and you know I need to make stuff that's a little more friendly towards, you know, sales. As an artist, all that does is just put a parameter on what I'm trying to do. So it's like, okay, it's like telling myself I can only paint in red. Well, I just need to make something that has a little bit more of a dynamic quality that might make it more design or aesthetically pleasing, that sort of thing. I'm not gonna make a whole bunch of like super depressing stuff that might not sell, although it might depending on the gallery, right? So I think that's where you have to kind of like, you know, as an artist, if you're wanting to experiment somewhat, you can, but you have to also understand the parameters of the gallery you're working with. The one I can think of recently was actually Diane Harper's show at Gallery 26. She got really experimental with the stuff she was doing with 3D work, and yet the stuff she made had a commercial appeal, and she sold a bunch of that. So I think you can make it work. It's just a little bit more of a challenge. I know several people in this room have ties to educational galleries. But the primary goal of this is just that, it's education, right? These galleries are here to, like if it's a university gallery, they're there for their students and the students on campus. That's what that gallery is for. It's there for them to be able to maybe add on to what they're learning in the classroom or in the studio. It's not there to try to sell to people. Educational galleries rarely are just on their own. They're often part of some other kind of larger institution. So they might be part of like a university, or they could be part of like a museum, right? Or they could be part of maybe some kind of nonprofit that has a space that's trying to like has a mission statement, like we want to save the oceans. And so they have a gallery where they have artists that do ocean themed work that comes in and helps to educate people about what's going on with the world's oceans. right? So you have these things that kind of happen like that. Educational galleries don't usually have clients they have to please, but they often do have like a board of directors or a committee or a curatorial team or something that they have to make happy with what's going on. This is one of those things that, like, I learned a lot just being a part of the AMFA with how, and I wasn't even part of the curatorial team, I was just around enough to see how they approach sometimes what they were coming up with to put on the walls. And kind of see, well, this is why they did this versus this, or that sort of thing. And also teaching at a university, I got to know the curators of the gallery at UALR and kind of understood how they approached putting shows together for that place. And they always had that kind of educational, we want this to bring this up to the public, that sort of thing. They sometimes will have a focus or a theme. Like, for example, if you are approaching a gallery that's at a school of illustration and you're a sculptor, what do you think your chances are? Probably not really good, right? I mean, they might bring it in as something for the students to draw or something, but more than likely they're going to be getting examples of illustration and putting that in. And this is the really big difference with an educational gallery is that they want more than the works. The more you can offer on process, on meaning, on the story that went into the work, anything like that gives you a much stronger chance of getting into that gallery. Because they want that there for the students to learn from, right? Or from the general public to learn from. So if I go into a commercial gallery, I might just have a wall tag that says like title, medium, size, and in big print, the price. I go into an educational gallery, it might have artist, titles, medium, size, and then like a paragraph about why the artist painted a red triangle or whatever it is, right? So it's that kind of thing that you have to like keep in mind is that you're trying to give value added to any exhibition you propose to a gallery that's in an educational system. The other thing is, unlike with a commercial gallery, where you might be seeking representation, meaning you want continuous work with that gallery, an educational gallery is often a one-off. I am going to have an exhibition for 2 months at this university gallery in Chicago. And then when it's done, it's done. Now you might end up building a relationship with that gallery and going back 3 years later and then 3 years after that and keep doing some shows. But for the most part, you're there just for that moment in time, just to put that exhibition on. As the artist, here's what I would tell you. You invite them. It's a perfect opportunity. If you have an exhibition at like a university, what that tells like a gallerist is that there's a curator that put their stamp of approval on your work. So this is good enough to put in here to teach our students with. And that's the perfect opportunity for you to cold call on like a gallery that you want to get into and say, hey, I've been a follower of your gallery for a long time. I'm very interested in potentially working with you one day. I just want to let you know that in September and October at this university, I've got an exhibition of my work up, and I'd love for you to be able to come out and see it. And I will actually be at the reception for it, and I'd love to meet you in person if you're there, right? You use that as a way to leverage that connection.
So,
Because when you have a show at like a university gallery or an educational gallery, it sounds pretty good, right? Well, I'm showing at this university gallery. So can I talk them into hosting me to do some kind of gallery talk? Or can I teach a workshop at the same time? Or can I, do these other events that go with it? And all of a sudden, it's not just whatever's happening in that gallery, right, for that 1 month. It's also all the other events I can do around it. Maybe find new clients that way, maybe make sales that way, that sort of thing. And sometimes, and I know that this has gotten smaller over the years, but universities sometimes even have a stipend that they will give the artists to come in and do something like that with their students. So it's always worth asking, are there other things I can do? Or even put it in your proposal. So educational galleries are also, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but they're different in that you're not just sending a portfolio of works, you're usually sending a proposal. And I actually brought an example of one of my proposals. I'll kind of go through this a little bit later. You guys can look at it before you leave if you want. But you'll notice it's not just a portfolio. I have like the example of a work with a wall tag that shows what it's going to look like. I have like a artist statement, a show statement. I have, this is what an educational panel is going to look like, so they can see what a sample is going to look like. And then I put like a gallery of works towards the back, right? But I have these other things that show what the show is going to do. And I talk about what it's going to do educationally. And this was actually accepted by UALR. I did this exhibition. Several of you, I know you guys can do it. So you guys can look at this later and see, I didn't change anything of it. It's exactly the way it was, the way I submitted it. So any questions about educational galleries? Okay, so this is one of the hardest ones to nail down, right? Commercial galleries are really easy. They want to make money, they're in business. Educational galleries are in, the business of education, so they're there to expand or educate the public or their students or whatever. The alternative galleries can be incredibly different depending on what their venue is, what their space is, who they're tied to. There's all these different things that kind of happen with them. The thing I would say is once you're looking at a gallery space that you really can't say, well, this is like tied to a university or a museum or some kind of educational institution, and it's not a commercial gallery, then what you're probably looking for is a mission statement. You're looking to see if that place has something that drives it, right? So if I wanted to work with like let's say Habitat for Humanity opened up a gallery space, don't you think the shows they're going to put on are probably tied towards what they do, right? So that space is going to have a theme to it. It's going to have a mission. And your work needs to somehow tie into that. Now, your work might not be exactly what they do, but if you can find a way to tie it to what they do, then it might work, right? A good example of that would be an artist, let's say they do something with, they make like sculptures, right? But their sculptures aren't necessarily about like the things that like Habitat does. It doesn't have anything to do with wildlife or anything like that. Maybe they make abstract sculptures. However, they can send a proposal to a space like that that says, I will run a workshop where people will make animals out of, right? I'll show them how to sculpt animals or something. You might be able to find a way to tie it to that space and raise awareness for the mission of Habitat for Humanity, houses, whatever it is that they need to build. Does that make sense, what we're doing with them? Their spaces can resemble a traditional gallery space. They might literally have a white wall cube, right? That is in their main business space or something, right? That would be something that they could, curate and run just like a white cube gallery. Or it could be a space just like the one you're in, right? This would be like an alternative space, right? There could be art all over these rooms. And, Tanya's mission statement could be, come have fun. I don't know. But, it could be one of the, right? Come have fun and talk about art.
It already is.
But it's like, that's what I'm getting at, is they can be that wildly different. They can be different parts that you have to really kind of look at each one individually. Alternative galleries, let's see. If they are part of a nonprofit, they most likely will, have that mission statement, and that mission statement often has some kind of social connotation to it, right? Most nonprofits are nonprofit because they're trying to do something to better where they are, their city, their region. They're trying to raise awareness about a cause or something like that. So they are also very cause-driven. The alternative spaces that don't do that are the ones that are a business that's not in the business of selling art, but wants to connect to art. So the coffee house, right? That's like kind of the classic. I'm an emerging artist. I've never shown my work before. But this coffee house I always go to has art on the wall, so I'm gonna go talk to them about hanging my art on there. That's an alternative space. But they can also be like the programs I ran years ago when I partnered with the Arkansas Capital Corporation Group, with Mugs Cafe, and with the Burgundy Hotel. All three of those places partnered with me to be the curator for an exhibition program. And I devised programs specific to each location that worked with who they were. At Arkansas Capital Corporation, we tended to have group exhibitions. They filled up the office space, the corporate offices, so I would fill these spaces. They even put railing in to hang work on. The works, I tended to select work that was more what we would call like on the fine art side. So it had kind of that kind of higher end feel to it a little bit. Most of the time, I mean, sometimes I had paintings that were $10,000, $12,000 in there because their boardroom was a place where multi-million-dollar investment deals were being made. So that kind of work fit that kind of space. Mugs was a coffee house. So in that space, I limited the price tag to $300 or less, except for like one showy piece. If you wanted to put a showpiece up that was, like a big painting that was right on the front wall, and you want to charge more for that, that's to bring people in, right? But everything else, I said, keep it $300 or less. And in that place, because it was a coffee house, I could show really weird stuff. I could show oddball stuff. One of my favorite shows I ever did is I worked with 4 of the illustrators from the Democrat Gazette, and we did a whole show of their illustrations. It's fantastic. I couldn't do that in a lot of other spaces, but I could do it there, and I got away with it and actually sold a lot of that work. So it worked. The Burgundy Hotel is a high-end kind of boutique hotel kind of thing, right? And has a really high-end restaurant in it. So in that case, I hung work on all 3 floors of the hotel, and that tended to be like larger, more aesthetic works. A lot of them were abstracts, very colorful, stuff that worked against kind of the neutral colors of the hotel. Sometimes like photography worked really well in there, that sort of thing. And then I put together a program with the restaurant where you could buy like a group of tickets. It's $70 a ticket, and they did a prefix meal, and you got a tour with me through the work. So I would take the group through all the artwork, and then we'd go down to the restaurant and have dinner. And that was somewhat successful. But being alternative spaces, they had problems. The hotel wouldn't put better lighting in, and it was only lit by the skylights in the atrium. And so we got to like February, and it was too dark for people to see the work, and that program kind of collapsed on me. Arkansas Capital was still an office space, which meant the only night people could come see the work was Second Friday Art Night, unless they were coming there for business. It was very hard for people to see the work. Mugs actually was the most successful of the 3, the coffee house with the lowest price point. I sold more work out of that alternative space than I did with the other 2. And that's because I think the price point was lower and it was a coffee house, right? People were in there all the time. They could see the work all the time. So that right there is a really good kind of microcosm of the way alternative spaces work and how you have to kind of see what it is they're looking for. Like, I would turn down artists for the Burgundy, but might tell them that I'll show them at Mugs. You're not a good fit for that, but you're a great fit for this, right? That sort of thing. So, and like the way that I ran those spaces, alternative spaces might be artist run, right? So beware. Artists running stuff sometimes doesn't always work. You need to research the artist, right? But sometimes it works great. Sometimes artists are really good at it. Sometimes, they have an idea and they're just not very experienced in it. I'm joking around, but just like any other place you want to research who it is that's running the space and, what's their track record, that sort of thing. But they also might be an artist-run space that's more like a collective, and they want you to join the group before they'll show you work. So there's those little things too. They could also be seasonal, they could be temporary. There's a lot of little things that go into how an alternative space works, where you have to just kind of know, you gotta research them. But they can even be online only, right? It could be an online gallery, that's it. They don't have a physical space, so you're just sitting on JPEGs and stuff, and then they're showing it, and you may or may not sell. Or they could be part of like a religious organization, which means you better not have things that offend that religion in your work, right? So you have to kind of figure out what it is that they're looking for as well. And I've seen great shows in all these kinds of spaces. But as the artist, you have to kind of understand what it is you're trying to, and always think of it this way, I'm trying to partner with something. That's the one thing I really want everyone to know. I think a lot of artists feel like they are below the gallery space, that they are secondary, that it's more important. No, you're a partner. If I go in and work with a gallery, I'm in business with that gallery. I'm partnering with them. I am doing my part to provide the thing they're trying to sell or the thing they're trying to exhibit, and I am working just as hard to get people in to see it as they are. It is a partnership. Yeah, next slide. So let's talk about the approach, right? There are several things that you want to remember when you're trying to approach sending something to a gallery space or whatever. The number one thing is to do your due diligence. Make sure you're researching the gallery or the venue, understand the motivations they have, know what their expectations are, and what you think yours might be. That's really important. If you're seeking sales, don't show at the university, right? If you're seeking a way to raise your profile and you're not worried about sales right now, show at the university. It's one of those things that when you understand what their motivation is and what yours is, this is why I had you guys write that stuff at the very beginning, right? I want to raise my level of pedigree right now as an artist, right? That's what my next year is going to be. That's what I've decided as an artist. Well, then I'm probably not going to go to a lot of commercial galleries. I'm going to start looking for nonprofits that are mission driven that flow with what I'm doing. Or I'm going to look for university galleries. I'm going to look for alternative spaces. I'm going to look for those things that allow me to raise the awareness of my work. And I'm just not worried about sales yet, right? Does anyone know what a loss leader is?
What?
A loss leader. What's a loss leader?
Yes, it's a product usually that's sold at a loss to bring in customers for other work.
Say that again.
Loss leader.
Yeah, but what is it?
It is a product that you sell knowing you're going to lose money with the idea that it's going to build up a customer base for you to build future wealth, right? So exhibitions at like a university gallery or an alternative space, if you often think of them as loss leaders, I'm doing this show to build my resume, to build my level of prestige or how well people know me or whatever else. I'm doing that even though I know I'm going to spend far more to make the work for the exhibition than I'm probably going to get in sales, right? That figurative exhibition I did at UALR, I made a few sales, but I lost money, right? And I knew I would.
It seems to me, basically, thinking of it as different levels of exchange of energy.
Yeah.
You know, this is for money, this is for something, this is an investment for that.
Mhm.
And so that flow going back and forth is what I'm looking for.
Pretty much. You want to make sure that you've got the right flow, right? That you don't have something that's getting dammed up and blocked or whatever. You want it to be where if I am aligning with this kind of gallery, then I'm going to end up being able to get what I need out of it and they get what they need out of it, right? Which is number two, right? Know the kind of the type of gallery you're approaching. Look at other exhibitions and artists that have shown in that venue. Do you fit in that group? Can you talk about other artists or exhibitions intelligently with the people running the venue you want to show at? In other words, do you know their program? This is really important. I actually was talking to Renee and Daniel at Gallery 26 the other day, and they said one of the things that drives them the most crazy is when someone comes in to show work and doesn't seem to know any of the other artists in the gallery or what the gallery does. They just come in and say, I've got artwork to show you, right? If someone comes in and is like, I love this piece, and they're talking intelligently about the work that's already on the wall, or they know the artists that are already in the gallery, anything like that, you're making a connection with the gallerist, right? Same thing if you're, able to get kind of face-to-face time with like people running those educational spaces. If you can talk about their program and say, I really want to be able to show in your space because of what you're doing with your illustration program. I think it's fantastic, and I want to be a part of helping those students get better, right? That's a big deal. That helps. That shows that you actually know what their program is. and you're trying to be a part of it rather than just you're the next, number in line for me to, get a show, right? Can you fulfill the purpose of the gallery if you show there, and can it fulfill your purpose? That's kind of what we were talking about earlier, right? Am I able to fulfill their mission statement, and can they fulfill my mission statement? Even if your mission statement is dollar bills, right? Can they do that for you? Because not all galleries will be able to sell your work, and you're rolling the dice sometimes. And this is the other important one. Are you looking for a long-term or a short-term relationship? And does the gallery fit that? Are you wanting to get with a commercial gallery and work with them for the next 10 years? Or are you looking for, I just need a show for the next 2 months to make a little bit of cash and move on, right? Well, that tells you what kind of show what show venue to target. If you want to build a long-term relationship, that tells you what kind of, gallery to kind of go for. So, okay, next slide. What you're going to kind of need with these are, you got to have a strong portfolio of consistent works, right? They want to know that you actually can make work. I say a minimum of 10, but usually something up to like 20 works a little bit better. And what they're wanting to see often is works within the last couple of years too. That's the other thing. If you send them a portfolio that has works over the past decade and you only have 10, what that signals to the gallery space is you don't make a lot of work, or you're very slow, right? So a commercial gallery may turn you down just because of that. If they sell the 5 pieces you bring, you might not be able to replace them for 2 years because you work so slow, right? So if you come in and you say, here's 20 pieces I've made over the past 2 years, that shows that you're making work. You are engaged, right? Portfolio or digital portfolio. Again, this is something you got to look into, right? So one of the big things with commercial galleries right now is like if you send an email inquiry to them saying, hey, I would love to submit to your gallery, who do I need to send the portfolio to? They're going to click your website in your signature. They're going to look at it, and then they're going to respond and say, hey, Mr. Bean, thank you for contacting us. We took a look at your website, and while we think your work is professional, doesn't fit what we're doing. They've already shot you down because they already took a look at your website. Or they're going to look at your Instagram or your social media or whatever it is, and they're going to figure it out, right? So usually if they ask you for a physical portfolio, then they already looked a little bit and they're interested. And they'll say, yes, please send a portfolio to us this, or they're going to set an appointment for you to come in and meet with them, right?
Physical portfolio meaning
Actual.
the actual work.
Sometimes it depends on the gallery, right? Like Renee told me the other day, she prefers actual originals. So when artists come up, she says, bring originals in a portfolio, if at all possible, instead of reproductions. So just depends on the
But if
gallery.
you're a sculptor, then it gets more difficult the
Yes.
more,
Yeah.
yeah.
The more like transport unfriendly your works are, the harder it is to do
Things
that,
with
right?
glass.
Yeah, so you might end up, like if there was a sculptor, they might not bring physical works into the gallery. They might just bring photographs, right? Or that might be when like a studio visit gets arranged. We're gonna come out and look at your art. If you do get to show the portfolio, or if you might include like an email, you can include like your artist statement or bio, or it should be on your website, that sort of thing. And your resume or CV, right? Some combination of all those things. And the reason that's important is it shows that your CV is going to show like your exhibition history, right? So what I would tell like the students I was working with at UALR who didn't have a lot of exhibition experience is do your own shows, right? Do a house show. It doesn't matter. Give it a title, and a date, and a place, and put it on there so that when you do approach like a gallery, you've got items listed on there that shows that you're actually working and exhibiting. Because a lot of times, they're not necessarily going to know that show or that space or whatever. So they don't know that it was in your friend's apartment and that you had Ritz crackers and cheese and like invited 9 people over. They don't know that. You just called it, new work for a new year and put that on your resume and you had a show and you sold 1 piece for, a Happy Meal or something. But, you got to get started somehow. So that's where those like self-made shows and stuff really kind of help to kind of build up and pad the resume a little bit. And like I say on here, make sure you're prepared with any of this stuff to send a digital version. That's really important these days. is that you can send a quick digital version of it. And when you do that resume, and I'm sure you guys understand this, but you know it's about your accomplishments as an artist, right? Don't tell me the years you worked at Walgreens or something. I don't need to know that as a gallery, right? I just need to know what you're doing as an artist. So you have to build an artist resume versus just a regular resume. Artists are really interesting because we have like 9 different types of resumes we have to put together for depending on what we're doing. If I'm teaching, I have to have a teaching resume. If I'm trying to talk to a gallery, I have to have an artist resume that has, gallery stuff. It just depends. Here's the one that's really hard. The last one. A following. That's really hard. But that's very important to a commercial gallery. And the reason it's important is you're bringing new clients to the gallery. If you already have a following, if you have a really strong following on social media, if you have a strong following locally, like if they look at your CV and see that you've got all these shows, and they ask how sales are going, you're like, well, I've been selling pretty consistently. What that tells them is there are already people that are fanning your work. So now it's more like that true partnership we're talking about, right? They're bringing their clients, you're bringing yours. And now you're coming together and you're working together to make even more sales, and kind of up the ante, right? So that following is very important to be able to show to a commercial gallery. Sometimes that might be the one thing that separates you. If there are 3 artists that apply to a commercial gallery and you all have work that isn't exactly the same, but it's kind of, you're all about the same experience level, you've done about the same kind of shows or whatever, and you have similar work, but it's not the same. Maybe you're all photographers or something. But your Instagram has 30,000 followers and theirs each has 500. Which one do you think the gallery is going to probably sign? The one with 30,000 followers, right? If the work's all good, they're going to go with the one that's probably going to bring a whole lot more people. So all of my social media, I try to present myself as a professional artist. Even though sometimes I put personal stuff on there too, I never put anything personal that would derail what I do as an artist, right? So in my personal Facebook account is probably the one that I do that the most. I'll do some dumb joke or I'll talk about the things I'm reading or something like that. But that just shows another side of who I am as an artist. And I'll do that sometimes on my Instagram, but my Instagram's full of images of my artwork. It rarely shows pictures of me, right? And I'm not showing necessarily, other than the rare occasion where I post what I ate or something, right? Most of the time it's going to be, I'm at this place, if I'm on vacation, I might post the museum I went to because that falls in with what I do. So if I am wanting to share things with friends and family, more personal things, I can use direct messaging. I can use Messenger for that and just send them stuff. And I'm constantly sending messages to people because I'm saying, oh, this is really dumb, look at this, and I'll send them something. But I don't put it usually on my public page. Or you learn how to create subgroups where you share just to them. So I'm going to create this post, but only Scarlett can see it, right? Something like that, right? And then she can comment on it, and no one else will see that post, right? So you can go in and do that kind of stuff too with your social media accounts. I got early on very careful about what I put out like that, who I tag and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was a lot more because I do so much figurative art that people freak out sometimes when you put the nude drawing on there. So I've always been pretty careful about putting stuff out there and making sure, they're okay with me sharing it or, it fits with what I'm doing, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you're not gonna see, like I said, you'll see me make jokes or show things about Dungeons and Dragons, that play D&D, or tabletop games or the books I'm reading, sometimes something about a TV show or a movie, but it's usually something creative or something like that. Or I might, post I had a big gout attack at the beginning of the summer and my hands I wasn't able to really close them. I was having a hard time drawing. Well, I tied it into what I do as an artist. I talk about it in my morning post, that's what. So I curate the social media.
And we do have workshops on social media and even just marketing, and a lot of workshops, you can find them on our YouTube channel, and we'll probably continue to have those kinds of workshops in the future, you were around so.
I think one of the,
They're available. They're available now.
Yeah, you can, our YouTube channel has GetSmART programs, and it has It has social media marketing, it has crowdfunding, it has building your brand. If you are doing research, it's got something on that. Like we have a lot of workshops that you can watch. Just
I'm very social media technology.
it's all.
So the educational gallery is going to be the same kind of thing with the commercial gallery, that you have a strong portfolio, right? So I'm just going to kind of talk about that minimally. The artist statement in the bio. But the last one is the big difference. Most likely you're doing a proposal, right? You are putting together some multi-page document that is going over in detail the exhibition you plan to put together. Whereas with a commercial gallery, you're sending basically a sampling of works for them to look at and say, does this fit what we do as a gallery and can we sell them? With an educational gallery, what you're doing is really putting together something to say, here is a very organized and streamlined kind of exhibition. Here's what I think the students get out of it. Here's what I think it does for the community at large. Here's how I'm organizing it, and here's what I'm putting together. So who in here saw the exhibition I did at UALR? That was the figurative one, right? So how were the wall tags organized? Do you guys remember?
They were black and white.
Do you remember that you started at one end and went all the way through? It actually was linear in that way, right? You didn't just jump around. You literally started at the piece that was straight across when you walked in the gallery. You went all the way down this wall, then up this, and then back up this one. And the tags were chronological, right? So I organized that exhibition in a way that as you went through it, you got to kind of follow along with my experience of being in person doing figure drawing, to the pandemic hitting and me going online and having to deal with everything that happened that way, and finding out certain things about, you know, that made it more interesting and new and advantages to being online. And then what happened once we all started going back into the classroom and back into the studio. So the works were all figure drawings, right? But they were organized in such a way that it had educational value if you went through it the way it was meant to go through. And I heard from Nathan that that exhibition, people took time in. They would sit there and go every tag and read every tag, you know, and they read every wall panel I put up, that sort of thing, because they took the time to read the story as I was going through. So if you're trying to organize something for an educational venue, think of it like that. How do I make this an experience rather than just a collection of work? Now, sometimes educational galleries will put a collection of work together because they're trying to show off like maybe a period of time, right? Well, we're going to do a collection of like pencil comic book pages, that sort of thing. And so everything will have that. And then they'll have wall tags for each one. But sometimes they're more organized than what I did, where it's like you literally go through A to B and you learn about it as you go through.
Well, how important is it
The more you can organize it, the more you can make it more individual and interesting, the better chance you've got of getting that, right? I did a show years ago at, has anyone ever been to Paducah, Kentucky? You been to Paducah? Paducah? Yeah.
I'm so
It's-
excited to raise my hand.
Paducah is this tiny little town. Well, it's about 30,000, right? I think it's about the size of Conway. And it's at the very southwestern tip of Kentucky. It's right where like 3 rivers converge. And it's kind of the cultural center of that whole like 100-mile radius, right, from Paducah. And they have a little art center called the Yeiser Art Center. It's a really nice little art center, and I got a show there. And I had kind of organized it to be more of like an experiential thing. These works kind of go together and these go together. I hadn't gotten to the point where I was writing like the lengthy wall tags yet, but it was still organized in a way where it was kind of interesting. And when I showed up for the opening reception, one of the committee members, again, there was a committee that's selected, right? Came up and said, "We love your portfolio and we're keeping it." Because I didn't just send in copies. I had a clamshell box that I layered with paper on the inside. I had a CD that had digital files for everything that was attached on the interior. I had a printed booklet that was bound in a spiral cone. I had all these support materials, and that was what I sent them. They hadn't seen anything like it because it was so well put together and so organized that it immediately went top of the pile.
That's marketing.
It's marketing, right? But it also showed that I understood what their venue was because of the way I organized what I was trying to do. It wasn't a commercial gallery necessarily. It was a little bit more than that. So I put more effort into trying to do that. Yeah.
Well, did they buy any pieces from you?
They don't have their own collection, but I did sell a couple of pieces to people in Paducah. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, you know, I took the time, and that was one of those calls, right? That was one of those I found in Professional Artist Magazine, that they had a call out. But I did research. I looked them up. I really looked at what they were doing. I looked at previous exhibitions. I looked at how they were organized. And I put that whole package together and sent it to them, and wowed them. I don't think they liked my work as much as they liked my portfolio, but it was enough to get me the show, right? So, you know, I'm taking the time to put that stuff together when I'm approaching this kind of venue. And then we'll look at the alternative spaces. Again, strong portfolio of works, but you might build this portfolio very different depending on the venue you're approaching, right? So this might be something like, if you're working with like a big nonprofit and you've actually done like a lot of murals, you might include a lot of shots in your murals and then have smaller works that they're going to show in their gallery space, with the idea that in your proposal, you will lead a community painted mural, right? So your portfolio may change depending on what the mission statement of that alternative venue is. If it's a coffee house, you might, if you know the owner, you might literally be able to walk in and pull up your Instagram and show them pictures, and they're like, all right. Yeah, that's about it, right? It just depends on what the venue is. Owner of a coffee house is probably not going to take a lot of time to go over like a full proposal. They're just going to go, does your stuff look good? Then yeah, you can have that section of wall. You know, and that's about it. If I'm writing an artist statement about my work and their mission is to save the Earth's oceans, I want to write my statement in such a way that it mentions things like that. You know, I don't do this because I use acrylics, so I use plastics. I'm horrible for the Earth, right? But like I might say, I switched from acrylics to using these natural, made paints or something as a way to help lessen environmental impact. If I was an artist that did that, see where I'm going with this? So you're tailoring your statements and stuff to fit that. Depending on the venue, you might need a proposal, just like an educational gallery. This is the big difference. You might also need funding. Alternative spaces may be great spaces and have zero budget. And you might have to fund it in some way for that exhibition to go through. This goes back to, what do you want out of the experience? If you think working with that alternative venue is going to land you a lot of future things, then you might need to write a grant, or you might need to do a Kickstarter or something like that, do crowdfunding as a way to fund the exhibition. And that just depends on who the venue is. And usually they're going to be really upfront about that. We love your work. Our budget is zero. Do you have $2,000 to make this happen? They'll tell you stuff like that. Also, a very well thought out plan for what you want to accomplish with exhibiting your work, and a way to communicate that with the venue. What I mean by this is, with like the coffee house, right? I might want them to do a artist spotlight night, where I'm just hanging out at the coffee house and they're sending a blast out to all their customers. Hey, we got a new artist. Come meet the artist. It's a great way for them to have a new marketing tool, right? But you need to be upfront with that stuff with the alternative venues and say, hey, I think we could do this and it'll bring more people in. I'm happy to do it, to be there, right? It makes more sales for you, it makes more sales for them, right? Make sense? Okay. Potential partner, I think we talked about that. Go to their shows if possible, keep up with their social media accounts and their upcoming events if they publicize them. And yes, it can be helpful to actually comment on their social media and engage with it, because whoever their social media person will get to recognize you. And then when you're submitting something, they'll go, oh, that's that person always comments, right? They'll know. Ask artists who show there for help. That is one of the best ways to get, especially into a commercial gallery, is if another artist started showing there, vouches for you. Oh, you got to go see Robert's work. He's fantastic. The shows he's done are fantastic. So they may know just a specific person to talk to, or they may vouch for you like that. Don't give up after one try. It's kind of like with, is anyone here a writer that also submits? Yeah. So you get sometimes the just form rejection letter, And then sometimes you get the rejection letter where they also kind of scribbled something, and you're like, ooh, a human being read this. Someone responded with a handwritten comment, right? And then maybe you get one back where it's like a handwritten comment, and they're like, we really like how you did this, and I can't wait to see the next story. And you're like, oh, they want me to submit again, right? So galleries are going to be kind of the same way. You'll get these coded messages from them that are like, hey, really appreciate you reaching out to us, and we really like your work, but it's not a fit for what we're doing right now. That's not necessarily a no, that's a no right now, right? And so you just keep working and keep talking to them. Be professional and follow any rules they have. One of the best ways to get disqualified is to not do what they say. Especially when it comes to like a university gallery or some alternative spaces, they may have very specific rules for how you send stuff to them. Because if you don't follow it, they will immediately disqualify you for whatever reason. And be prepared. This is another big one that I had to make sure the college kids knew. If you get in, are you ready? Can you afford the shipping? Things like that, right? I actually last summer applied to a show at a gallery, the Manifest Gallery in Cincinnati, and I was really glad I got rejected because I wasn't thinking about it when I did it. And I was like, oh, I already needed that money for something else. And it would have been about $400 to get my work there and back. So for me, I was very happy I got rejected. So it's just, can you follow through on what you're putting yourself out there to do?
So that's one of the questions you need to ask the galleries is, will you pay to have my work shared?
Yeah, that's if you are getting into like where you're exhibiting with them, you want to like ask if they have a contract. What are you paying for? What am I paying for? All those different things. That's kind of the business side. That's a little beyond this workshop because this is just trying to get you in there. There's another workshop for what you do once you get in, I guess. Yeah. So, and then again, like I said, be you, be genuine. It matters a lot more than you realize. The more genuine you are, the more connection you can make to those people, and the better chance you got. Okay, any questions about this stuff?